woman screams inside a locked apartment. A neighbor calls the police. Officers show up in under 5 minutes, and they leave without ever opening that door. By morning, she's dead, and the man responsible is standing so close to detectives, on more than one occasion, that they never even realize it. This is the story of how one murder cracked open a police department's cover-up of over 1,500 ignored assaults, and how a killer's own letter to a newspaper became one of the strangest pieces of evidence in the case. Before we get into it, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right there for you. Let's see how far this story travels. Shannon Schieber was the kind of person people remembered. Born in 1974 in Maryland, she was reading books on her own by age 3 and could already recite the alphabet backward before most kids could recite it forward. That pattern never really stopped. She graduated high school with honors, then blew through Duke University in just 3 years, triple majoring in math, philosophy, and economics. Most people don't finish 1-degree track that fast, let alone 3 at once. She could have gone straight into a high-paying finance career and never looked back. Instead, she spent a year working at a firm, then set her sights on something bigger. A doctorate from the Wharton School, funded by a full scholarship. Her goal wasn't wealth. Friends said she wanted to use finance to help people who were struggling. Fairness mattered to her in a way that shaped every decision. At 23, she packed up for Philadelphia to be close to campus, and outside of her studies, she swam, played lacrosse, and rode horses whenever she got the chance. She was, by every account, just getting started. Just after 2 in the morning on a night in May of 1998, a man in Shannon's building woke up to a woman screaming. Not a startled yelp, a terrified cry, followed by a desperate "help me." He went into the hallway toward her door and heard something worse. Gasping, like someone struggling to breathe, he tried the handle. Locked. No answer to his knocking. He called 911, then ran downstairs trying to find someone to help him break the door down. Only one neighbor was home, a woman whose husband was out at work. Not enough hands to force entry alone. Police arrived in under 5 minutes. By then, everything had gone quiet. They knocked. Nothing. The door was locked, showing no signs of forced entry. One officer even walked outside and shined a flashlight up at the balcony. Curtains drawn, door shut. Another resident downstairs backed up the neighbor's story, saying she'd heard banging at the same time. But with a locked door, a sealed balcony, and silence on the other side, the officers decided there wasn't enough to justify breaking in. They told the neighbors to call back if anything changed, and they left. She was already dying behind that door. The next day, Shannon missed a study session with classmates. She missed coffee with her brother. Worried, he drove to her building and noticed something the officers hadn't seen the night before. The balcony door was open. No one answered his knocking either. He tracked down the same neighbor who'd called the police, and the two of them forced the door open together. What they found inside would launch a 2-year manhunt. Shannon was dead. Books scattered near the bed. Blood on the blanket, on the walls, out on the balcony. The kind of blood pattern that told investigators she hadn't gone down without a fight. Her apartment was 2 floors up, but a tree grew close enough to the balcony that someone determined enough could climb it, guardrail or not. The medical examiner's findings were brutal. Strangulation, sexual assault, and blood in her mouth that didn't belong to her. She'd bitten her attacker hard enough to draw blood. Missing from the apartment: a pin, a necklace, a backpack, a camera, a stack of CDs. Small, personal items, the kind a killer might keep as trophies or try to quietly pawn. And then there was the detail that would haunt the department for years. The balcony door was shut when police stood outside that night. By morning, it was open, combined with the gasping the neighbor had heard before he even dialed 911. The timeline pointed to something chilling. Shannon was very likely already dead or dying, while officers stood just outside her door, and her killer was almost certainly still inside the apartment as they walked away. DNA from the scene didn't match anyone in any database. Detectives worked every angle they had, circulating her stolen belongings to pawn shops, chasing down a classmate whose DNA didn't match, following a lead about a stranger who'd followed Shannon on the street just 2 days before she died. None of it went anywhere. Months passed. the investigation stalled completely. Almost a year later, an anonymous man called the Philadelphia Inquirer. He wouldn't give his name, but he told reporters the police had missed something enormous, that Shannon's murder was connected to a string of other attacks in the same part of the city. When journalists started digging, what they found was staggering. Over the previous year, several women in the same neighborhood had been assaulted in near-identical break-ins. A man climbing through windows while they slept, choking or restraining them, then vanishing. One victim had handed police a strand of the attacker's hair after fighting him off. It was never sent to a lab. Another woman's assault was logged as a burglary. DNA was collected in some cases but never cross-referenced with others. As reporters dug further, they uncovered something far bigger than a few missed connections. This was routine practice inside the department. A staggering number of rape reports were never even classified as crimes. Some officials had gone on record suggesting a huge share of the women reporting assault were lying. When the story broke, the fallout was immediate and massive. Police were forced to reopen and reclassify roughly 1,500 cases that had been buried or dismissed. Shannon's case sat right at the center of the scandal. She'd chosen that apartment because the neighborhood felt safe. Neither she nor her neighbors knew a serial predator was already operating on their street, because the department that should have caught the pattern never even tried. With public pressure mounting, detectives abandoned their theory that Shannon's killer was someone she knew personally. They ran her DNA against the assault cases. It was an exact match. Same man, at least 5 known attacks, 1 murder, and still no name. They had one asset: a composite sketch built from a survivor's description, released alongside a $40,000 reward. The tip line lit up. None of it led anywhere. The attacks continued. Then a detective caught a television segment about geographic profiling, a technique where analysts map an offender's crime locations to predict where he likely lives. Specialists built a probability map of Philadelphia neighborhoods. Police canvassed those areas with flyers and the sketch. Still nothing. Then silence. Months without a single new report. Detectives began to suspect their attacker had gone to ground for good. They were wrong. In the middle of 2000, a bulletin arrived from police in Fort Collins, Colorado, nearly 2,000 miles away, describing a series of assaults with an eerily familiar pattern. Break-ins, women home alone, then a vanishing act. This time, the attacker had left DNA and a fingerprint behind. Philadelphia sent their evidence for comparison. Perfect match. Their killer hadn't disappeared. He'd relocated across the country and kept going. For the first time, investigators had a real shot. They pulled credit card records from both cities, searching for anyone whose card had been active in both locations during the attack windows. The list started at 319 names. Cross-referenced against the geographic profiling map, it shrank to 83. Before they could work through that list, a letter arrived at the police station from the attacker himself. He wrote that he'd left Colorado, that he didn't plan on returning, and, strangely, that he wanted to be caught. He described feeling isolated by what he was doing. The letter contained details only the real attacker could have known, but no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing traceable. Detectives suspected it was misdirection. A lie about his location meant to send them the wrong way. Meanwhile, the clock was working against them in a different way. Pennsylvania's statute of limitations on sexual assault was just 5 years, and the earliest known attacks dated back to 1997. Shannon's murder charge would never expire, but justice for the surviving victims was on a countdown. In 2002, years into the investigation, 2 tips landed within weeks of each other. One woman said the composite sketch resembled her ex-boyfriend. A separate caller said his neighbor drove a car matching a victim's description of the suspect's vehicle. Both callers gave the same name, Troy Graves. He was already on the list of 83. The pieces started falling into place fast. Graves had worked at a bank inside the exact neighborhood where the attacks had clustered. In 1999, right when the Philadelphia attacks abruptly stopped, he'd enlisted in the Army and was later written up for trying to force his way into a woman's room. He was stationed in Wyoming but lived just over the state line in Fort Collins, Colorado, both cities on the map. His ex-girlfriend told police he'd regularly come home from night walks with unexplained scratches and bruises, and his blood type matched evidence from Shannon's crime scene. Here's what detectives didn't know until much later. Philadelphia police had pulled Graves over in a routine stop back in January of 1999, right in the middle of the manhunt for Shannon's killer. They talked to him. Then they let him drive away, with no idea the man they were hunting had just been sitting in front of them. When police finally sat Graves down for questioning, he denied everything, right up until they asked for his fingerprints and DNA. He went silent for several seconds before agreeing, but only after speaking to his wife first. That hesitation was enough. He was arrested on the spot. The results confirmed what detectives already suspected. A perfect match to the evidence from Shannon's murder and every linked assault in both states. He was charged with dozens of counts across Colorado and Pennsylvania, including the murder of Shannon Schieber. Facing a possible death sentence in Pennsylvania, Graves offered a full confession in exchange for prosecutors taking capital punishment off the table. Both states agreed, but only after consulting Shannon's parents, who made their position clear from the start. They opposed the death penalty on principle, regardless of what their daughter's killer had done. Every surviving victim from both states supported that decision. The public reaction was fierce. Many couldn't understand how a murdered woman's own parents would fight to spare her killer's life. Shannon's parents didn't back down. They pointed to something they believed mattered more than the sentence. If police had taken the earlier assault reports seriously, they believed their daughter might still be alive. Graves eventually confessed to breaking in through the balcony, to Shannon fighting back hard enough to claw his face and bite his finger, to choking her until he believed she was dead. But his account didn't fully line up. He claimed he'd shut the balcony door behind him. Shannon's brother remembered it wide open the next morning. A small inconsistency that never got resolved, in a case built almost entirely on things that didn't get caught in time. Graves received consecutive life sentences plus an additional 60 to 120 years. He will not leave prison. Shannon's father sued the Philadelphia Police Department, arguing the earlier failures cost his daughter her life. The court disagreed, and no one was ever held accountable for the missed reports. The case did force the city to form a review committee for hundreds of previously ignored assault reports. But for Shannon's family, that was never the same as an admission of fault. If you're still thinking about that balcony door, let me know in the comments. Was it police negligence? Or was justice simply delayed by every angle Graves managed to slip through? Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story, and subscribe for more real cold cases like this one. Thanks for watching.